Right, so box and whisker plot. This I'm going to kind of encompass everything in this particular video to kind of make sure we understand the whole big picture. So let's pull up our graphing calculator because remember with our box and whisker plot, our thing that we really are concerned about is being able to calculate it with our graphing calculator. So I mean, you can definitely do this by hand, but you know, it just really makes it easier if we use our graphing calculator and do that one variable stat. So one var stat. So here we are. We got our calculator pulled up. Let's clear our list and let's go ahead and remember we go to stat. So our first command is stat. Let me get my pen up here. Oops, good, I didn't hit anything. Alright, so our first command is we hit the stat key. Remember, this is to go to one var stats. So one var stats. So after we hit that, we choose number one, which is going to be our edit. So let's go back. So we hit stat and we choose number one, which is edit. Alright, at this point, remember, we got to clear that list. So we practiced this last section. We go up on top of the L1, we press clear, not delete, press clear, and then press enter, and that clears your list. So we want to go ahead and enter our data points in. So we've got 5.5, 5.5, 5.1, 5.3, 5.2, 5.5, 5.5, 5.2, 5.6, 5.2. So count your numbers and make sure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can see here that if I go up one, I'm on the 10th number. You see right there, that says the 10th. I go down one, now I'd be on the 11th, and there's no number there. Okay, so our data is entered. Once our data is entered, then we go ahead and we go back to our stat key. But this time we go over to calculate. So we go over to calc and we choose number one, which is one var stats. Okay, remember by default, as long as you're putting stuff in L1, if you have a TI-83, the screen won't be as detailed. You'll just know that it's automatically in L1 by default. And so you've got L1. If you have a TI-83, your frequency list won't even come up. And then we just go down to calculate. If you do have a TI-83 and you're having any difficulties with that, just please just reach out to me. I definitely can help you. You know, I can come up with a different video to show you what your screen would look like compared to my screen and so forth. So remember that as we run through this, X bar is our mean, S of X is our standard deviation. So that would be, you know, if in this case here, that would be my, even though it says this, my sample, that's my population standard mean, and this is my population standard deviation. So even though the symbols are different, those are the ones we would use. We would use the X bar. Let me just pull this over here real quickly. So you know, when we're doing this, at this point, if we were doing this for mean and standard deviation, we would use this guy and this guy. Alright? Let's pull that calculator back up and let's go to what we really care about, because the numbers we want are down here at the bottom. So we want our 5-number summary, because on our box and whisker plot, or a box plot also known as, we have our 5-number summary. So let's go ahead and pull that guy down and put him someplace where we can see him pretty well. That'll work. Alright, so what we're looking for here in this 5-number summary is we can see we got 5 things. We got our min, our median, and our max, and then separating those we have our Q1 and our Q3. So let's review real quickly. After we slide our numbers into place, let's review what those mean as we have the in situation. So our minimum is this guy down here, and he's on 5.1, and he's in the right spot. So that guy is my minimum. I have my Q1, which is at 5.2, so I grab this slider and I pull him. Oops, I'm on the wrong thing. Let's go back to the active screen real quick. Sorry about that. So I got 5.2, so I pull him over to 5.2, drop him off. I've got my median, which is at 5.4, so I come back to my live screen. I drag that guy over to 5.4. I've got my Q3, which is known as my third quartile there, and that's 5.5. So I'm going to slide that guy to 5.5. And then last but not least, I've got my maximum, which is at 5.6. So I slide that guy over to 5.6. Alright, so I'm going to take a quick little snapshot of that guy. Oops, I don't like it I did that. Let's come back here. Let's see if I can't get there. That'll work. For whatever reason, it jumped off a little bit. So here I am. Here's our picture now. So this is the original one that we were working off of before we adjusted it, and so this is our answer here. And so let's kind of just let's make this bigger. Okay. So let's run through this. So now what we have is we have our 5-number summary. So remember, this guy right here is known as our 5-number summary. Forgive my shorthand there with that. And we come over here and we see that we have our minimum, we have our Q1, we have our median, we have our Q3, and we have our max. Now, quartiles, if you look at this, hopefully what you see is 4 quarters. So this is quarter number 1, this is 25% right here. From the Q1 to the median is quarter number 2, and that's 25%. From the median to quarter 3 is 25%. And from Q3 to the maximum is also 25% to add up to a whole 100% of the data. So going from our minimum to our maximum equals 100% of our data. Now, to relate this and to understand, we have several questions that get asked based upon this conversation right now. So inside the homework we have several things. So one question that could be asked is, what percentage of our data is less than 5.5? So less than 5.5. So we're looking for everything down that direction. Well, less than 5.5, if we go through there, let me just clean this up a little bit and try a different approach here so I have the ability of, there we go. So, if I'm looking at 5.5 or less, that's all of that data right there. If we add it up, we can see we have 25 plus 25 plus 25. That means that 75% of my data would be less than 5.5. Let's clear that screen. Let's go another way. What percent of my data will be greater than 5.4? So there's 5.4. We go greater. We take our quartiles and we add them up. So we got 25 and 25. So that means that would be 50%. 50% of my data is greater than 5.4. So this whole thing of a box plot is all about quartiles. And so if someone asks you what percentage is greater or less, we just know that each one of the quartiles is 25%, and then we can add or subtract in order to accomplish what we need. Now, one last thing that you might ask me is you might say, well, Fix, wait a second. This section right here, this quartile, and this quartile are almost identical in length, the size. Why is this one bigger? This quartile right here in red has more spread. That's the cool part about a box and whisker plot. A box and whisker plot helps you understand how much spread your data has. So what you can see here is you can see that there's a little bit more spread. Our data is not as close together. There's a little more variability. In that particular quartile from 5.2 to 5.4. Whereas from 5.4 to 5.5, those numbers are pretty close together. They're kind of crunched into one spot. And we can see that when we look here at the data set. So that kind of covers a little bit of everything about box plots, how you break it down, how you calculate it, how you build it, and so that we can practice some questions inside the homework.